alaikum wa rahmatullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's divine light and peace and blessings, strength, peace, and protection be with you. This is Ihsan. Welcome. It's been a while that I haven't made a car video, and I just thought I would reach out again. Many people this week are reeling from the news and the tragedy of Kobe Bryant's death and passing, as well as his daughter and a number of other people who were involved in the helicopter crash out in California. And the media has been of course, saturated with the news, and it's been quite tragic for many people who looked up to him, who saw him as a role model, who saw him as a star, who saw him as someone that they idolized and someone that they saw as a human being who had reached really what people perceive this life to be about: stardom, fame, success, excellence. So I wanted to use this opportunity to, I think, communicate something that I think is very essential and most people are not thinking about generally, and also to put his life and death in the context of a greater and grander scheme of things. So I would like to begin really by offering my condolences to his family, his loved ones, his friends, anyone who were close and near and dear to him. The value of any human life, of every human life, is sacred, and every human life must be cherished and honored and respected. So, my deepest condolences to the family and friends and loved ones of him and his daughter and everybody else that was involved in this helicopter crash. Now, Kobe Bryant was, again, a famous basketball star, basketball player. He was seen as one of the all time greats. And I think part of this tragedy is the fact that he met with his death at such a young age. Really, he was only 41 years old, and his daughter was only 13. So apparently, they were on their way to practice, and the helicopter crashed, and they and a number of other people lost their lives. Again, my condolences to the families of all who were involved in this crash. So, one of the reasons that this is so tragic to so many people, in addition to the fact that a human life was lost, and we have to sort of keep in mind that people are dying every day. People are dying throughout the world in the thousands, in the tens of thousands every single day, due to accidents, due to violence, due to hunger, due to disease, and all of their lives are valuable. Every human being's life is valuable. So tragedy is with us every single day, though the media isn't saturated with it. And so we tend to be oblivious. We don't think about it. And our culture has become such that it constantly pushes death away as far as possible. In traditional cultures, particularly in the East, where there are strong family and tribal relations, extended family, you have death as a normal part of life because people are not isolated the way they are in the West. In Western civilization, human beings tend to be isolated into their nuclear families. And even that is becoming sort of almost a thing of the past. People are more and more becoming isolated individually, completely cut off from their families because of the problematic culture, which leads to an inability to sustain the most basic and fundamental relationships in human lives, that between families. So you have generally children who are estranged from their parents, parents who are estranged from their children, spouses who are estranged from one another and have ended up in divorce. And this is just it's a destruction of really the fabric of human society. But in the East, where you have much stronger family relations, ties, tribal relationships and ties, and one is constantly engaged and interacting with with an extended and large network of close and loved ones, people are dying all the time. See, again, in the West now we have this new sort of model where as people get older, they become, "A'udhu billah wa astaghfirullah, may Allah Almighty forgive us," obsolete. This term that they're old and that they need to be, or they tend to be separated into separate communities, right? 55 and older. Now they've sort of euphemized that by saying 55 and better. Essentially, what society is doing is separating human beings from one another, but especially from the elderly, from death. And this is a strange thing because, there was an interesting movie. First of all, if we go back to the story of the Buddha, right, and I've mentioned this before, his father wanted to protect him from experiencing sickness, disease, death, from witnessing it, from even seeing it. so that he would not question this life, and so that he would not seek the path of spirituality and this path of truth. What is the purpose of our lives here beyond just what's right in front of our noses? There was an interesting movie made in the 70s called Logan's Run, and it was about a society, apparently a post-apocalyptic society that existed within essentially a dome, this isolated society in which no one was allowed to live beyond 30. And there was this belief that was propagated that beyond 30 people would be recycled and be brought into new bodies and so on. So nobody ever really saw anybody that was sick, that was diseased, that was death. And so people generally tended to not question their environment, their society, the world that they were living in. And it was kept like this on purpose, that people do not question what is the purpose of all of this and just basically lived to consume. The entire purpose of life was consumption and the indulgence of pleasures. Yet within that, there was a group of people that were known as the runners. They were seeking to escape that society. And one of the security personnel, he was questioning, why would these people run? We have everything we want. We have all the pleasure. We have all the joy. We have everything we could possibly want at our fingertips. Why would anybody try to get out of this? Why would anybody try to run? And his partner said, my friend, you're asking dangerous questions. And these security personnel who were essentially put in place to catch or to prevent people from running, essentially running away from that society and trying to escape it, they were known as sandmen. Right? He was a sandman. And culturally, a sandman is the one that puts people to sleep. Right? That's sort of where that word that's where that connotation comes from. A sandman or the sandman is the one that puts people to sleep. So it's an interesting reference there that the society was really intent on keeping people asleep by preventing them from seeing death. Now, the reason that Kobe Bryant and his daughter and everyone else on this tragic accident has, the reason that their deaths, they're untimely deaths, right? And that's an interesting term, untimely death. There's no such thing as an untimely death. It's destined. When it's time, none can escape. None can escape it. When it's destined, it will meet us, whether we are, in the first years of our life or in the end. And so the reason that this is so tragic to so many people, and again, every human life is sacred. Every human life is precious and noble and beautiful. The reason that this is so tragic to so many people, right? Because it was unexpected, because it happened sort of at the peak of his life or at such a young age for him and his daughter and everybody else. And it's brought death into people's consciousness, that it could happen at any time, that death can occur to anyone at any time, even a star, even one who may have apparently what everybody would wish: fame, success, money, wealth, all of it. It can happen to anybody at any point. And this is really what scares people, that it brings to mind their own mortality. And unfortunately, rather than use this as an opportunity to awaken, to evolve, to question, what are we doing here? And why are we here? And is this really it? Is this all there is? Is this the extent of my existence? I actually heard on a broadcast that, let's honor his memory and let's keep pushing forward, because that's what he would want us to do. I doubt that. I think what he would want us to do now that he has crossed over is have us ask the deeper questions. Why are we really here? Even if you're a basketball star, a millionaire, a successful business person, no matter what amount of success you may have had in life, it is going to end. Now, the point of this video is not to be sad or depressing or morose. Far from it. It's to wake us up so that we can truly live. Because the worst thing we can do is live our lives and only in the end to regret. Then why didn't we ask the important questions? Because at the end, what will matter? It won't matter what success we achieved, what legacy we left behind. Who cares? That's behind and that's in the past, and you can't take that with you. The only thing in the end which will matter is what you can take with you. And that means what light, what love, what consciousness did you cultivate on your time on earth? that you can then take forward into the journey beyond. So the purpose of this video by far is not to, make people uncomfortable, although that may be necessary because, the truth and reality is growth and development can only take place out of our comfort zone. So we could keep pushing the subject of death away and trying to escape it. And this is this new model and paradigm in society. If you look around, it's all about longevity. It's all about maximizing lifespan. For what? To what purpose? It's to eat more, to consume more, to do what? Right? Now I can understand to live a strong, healthy life with divine purpose, to increase in light, to increase in beauty and in excellence and in goodness and in really a conscious state of consciousness, an awakened state of consciousness that then will be of benefit to the soul and to the spirit beyond this world. That I can understand. But to simply live more for what? For more drama, for more indulgence and satiation of the appetites? That's pointless. And that's what death does. It wakes us up. It gives value to life. And so long as we ignore it, we actually devalue our lives. We waste our lives. And this is why the Prophet Muhammad said, remember death often. Meditate upon death. This is even a practice within the Buddhist tradition. And all faith and spiritual traditions ultimately deal with death. And to blind ourselves to it and distract ourselves from it does not serve us. We must have the courage. And really what's lacking is faith. Right? Courage, confidence are synonymous with faith. And when we are afraid of dying, it's unfortunate because it is only a clear indication of the lack of faith in our own hearts and souls. And this is for everyone. We're all afraid of death. This is the ultimate fear. And if you can overcome the fear of death, only then does a human being become truly free. When we face death, only then can we truly live, because the rest of our lives are spent running from reality, running from the inevitable. It's like we're on a ship and we're all moving towards the inevitable destination, which is death, that doorway of death. We're all heading there, and there's no way off the ship. And everybody's pretending that we're not going there. Everybody in this culture is just enjoy and eat. And who are the people that are sitting on the edge and saying, what are we doing here? Why are we here? What is the purpose of this? And where are we going? And shouldn't I be preparing for that? Isn't there more to this than just indulgence in this life and success in this life? Death frees us. Death awakens us. Death liberates us. There's a really good book called Tuesdays with Maury, and I believe it was written by Mitch Albom. If I'm mistaken, I'll correct it in the description below this video. But basically, this was the story of a professor. It's a true story of this professor, Maury Schwartz, and his student, Mitch Albom, I believe that was his name, who was one of his favorite pupils. And they had a very close relationship. And of course, Dr. Schwartz was getting older, was dying. So he had a limited amount of time left to live. So his student, Mitch, right, wanted to spend this time with him and to be with him and also to glean life lessons from him. He is somebody that he respected and admired and wanted to again, continue learning and keeping company with him in this last stage of his life. So every Tuesday he would go and visit. They would sit and talk, and eventually the transcriptions and sort of the conversations that they had became a book. It became a bestseller called Tuesdays with Maury. I would highly recommend. It's an easy read. Checking it out and reading that. And this is what the end result of Maury's life was. He concluded that you don't truly understand the value of life until you are facing death. And he said this is not something to run from, but accept it, embrace it, face it, and think about it, because it will put life into perspective. It will remind you of what is important and what is not, so that you can focus on that which actually matters. So one of the main messages was remember death, face death, don't run from it, or you will waste your life. And the thing that he concluded was most valuable was relationships. Relationships with human beings, relationships with family and loved ones. That this was the most essential thing to focus on, to cultivate, to nurture. And this is the casualty of contemporary and modern culture. Relationships, family relationships, because in this individualistic, me first mindset and mentality, All anybody is taught to care about is themselves. It's what's best for me. And whereas in the East, and what used to be common and traditional, and what is changing even in the East now, right? Throughout Eastern cultures, the focus was not on so much on me as it was on we. It wasn't what's best for me, but it was what is best for us. And so people tended to stick together. People tended to remain connected because that's where our strength comes from. That's where health comes from. That's where support comes from. It's from relationships. First and foremost, family relationships. And this is why the Prophet Muhammad constantly emphasized keeping the ties of kinship to the point that he said, if you sever ties of kinship, you are not from me. You are not of me. You're not following my path, my way, or my religion that I have brought from the divine. You have chosen a different path. Ties of kinship, relationships, family relationships. This is the greatest casualty of modern contemporary culture. This is what suffers when we chase ourselves and our needs, our desires, our goals, aspirations first at the expense of our relationships. And at the end, it's not worth it. You can become, a human being can have the greatest level of fame, notoriety, worldly success. But if you've lost that which matters most, you will never be whole. You will never be complete. You will never truly be fulfilled because happiness is only real when it is shared. And your family, your blood relationships, your parents, your children, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, your cousins, this is not a joke. These are divinely destined or ordained relationships, right? They were divinely destined. And I can understand uh, at some points it is maybe necessary to minimize negative or toxic relationships, but that also is a result, those types of relationships or those types of qualities in human beings and the way that they live their lives in such conditions are a result of having strayed far from the path. The path, faith, spirituality, religion, Al Islam specifically, is meant to preserve human relationships, human excellence, and it's meant to lead human beings to that which strengthens their relationships: humility, selflessness, love, sincerity, etiquette, excellence, right? Adab. That's what preserves human relationships. And there are no relationships more important, more valuable, more supportive than the ties of kinship. Now, we in the modern world, and especially in the West, have to do what is perhaps the most difficult thing to do because of the competitive nature of culture and society now and the absolute focus on worldly success and competition. Just simply surviving is quite a challenge now for virtually everyone, right? And it's becoming increasingly difficult because the baseline is constantly going higher and higher, right? And especially with technology, all it is doing is increasing artificial needs and artificial obligations so that we have to work harder and harder just to maintain the baseline now. For example, 10, 15 years ago, having a smartphone was it wasn't even an issue, right? People didn't have smartphones 15, 20 years ago, and it was not a necessity, right? Nobody, a phone bill 20, 30 years ago was like $10 or $15 a month. That was your phone bill. You had one phone at home, and that's what everybody knew and was used to. That's what they expected. And then came along pagers and so on, that people expected to get a hold of you when they could. Now, because of the proliferation of technology, people expect to get a hold of you instantaneously. If you don't respond instantaneously, you suffer for it. Right? There can be consequences, especially professionally, because that's the new norm. And not only that, not only has it added tremendous stress and pressure and rush to our lives, it's added tremendous requirements financially. It's added tremendous pressure to keep up with all of this. 15, 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, a phone was 15, 20 bucks a month. That was it for the entire family. Now, easily $200 or more for phones for 3 or 4 people. And not only that, you have to replace them every 4 years at least. And each phone now is about $1,000, close to $1,000, right? So we've just created a completely new requirement and need in our lives that makes our lives much more complicated. We keep telling ourselves that this is good, that it's making our lives better, But is it really? We've lost perspective. We've lost perspective on what's important and what actually matters. We are so distracted. We are so consumed by consumption that we've completely lost perspective on life and on reality and on what matters. And death puts everything into perspective. So I would simply reiterate and repeat the words of the Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who sought nothing from this world. He lived his entire life in absolute humility. They offered to make him a king of his community, a king of his nation, to give him the wealth of his nation, if only he would stop conveying this message. Right? They offered him anything he could possibly have wanted, worldly wise. And he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may peace and light be upon him. And may Allah guide human beings to knowing the messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who when offered the wealth of the world, said, if you put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, I will not stop from conveying this message, this truth. And he lived his entire life in utter humility, seeking nothing from this world, seeking but to guide human beings to goodness, to truth, to light, to excellence, to good character. He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said that my mission, I was sent for one reason, to perfect good character. That was the purpose of his mission, of his revelation, of the revelation itself, to perfect good human character. And turning away from wealth, turning away from the indulgences of this world, as did Jesus alayhi salam when the devil tempted him, right, as it's narrated in the Gospels, and showed him the wealth and the kingdoms of the world and said, I'll make you the prince and the king of this world. He said, for what shall it profit a man were he to gain the world and yet lose his very soul? This is how the Prophet ﷺ, and all of the prophets and messengers of God and their companions, especially the Sahaba Kiram, the holy noble companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, this is how they lived. Allahu Akbar. If anybody looks at their story and their history, their lives, it's impossible not to believe. These people turned away from all falsehood, all vanity, all illusion, all delusion, all indulgence. They turned away from all temptation for the sake of light and for the sake of truth, for the sake of true beauty, for the sake of excellence, for the sake of their Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were days, weeks that they had nothing, almost nothing to eat, where Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and others would literally tie stones around their belly to somehow lessen the pain from hunger because it had been so long that they hadn't had food. But they never swerved. They never deviated. They never turned away from truth, from eternity, from Allah. And so they were the most noble and the most excellent of human beings. Those are our examples. Again, our condolences and prayers to Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and everyone who died on this crash, and to everyone else who is dying on a daily basis. May Allah Almighty cover them all with His mercy and His light, and may He guide everyone else to truth and to what matters. May we have, and may He keep us upon the straight path. May we have the strength, the courage to embark sincerely upon the quest for truth, on the quest for meaning, and have the will to pull ourselves away from the constant consumption and indulgence that makes this world go round. Right? Anyone who's passed on, their message is not keep doing what you're doing and try to just keep, pursuing only the success and the pleasures of this world. When human beings' eyes have been opened, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and the Prophet ﷺ taught, that they would give anything to come back to simply remember their Lord and praise their Lord, even one time to say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah. They would give anything and everything to come back to, because then they would understand the value of such beautiful praise and worship, of remembrance. May Allah Almighty guide us to truth and keep us on truth, keep us on the path of righteousness and excellence. As-sirat al-mustaqim. Again, may He cover everyone who has passed away and who passes away with His mercy, and guide their families and loved ones to clarity and to strength. One last thing I'll say is, as Muslims especially, we have to really rethink our relationship with death. It is not something to be feared or avoided, it's something to be prepared for. Death is why we are alive. We begin dying the day we are born, and we're moving towards it. And the purpose of life, one fundamental purpose of life, is really the ultimate purpose of life. The real purpose of life is to prepare for death. Do what you need to do in this world, and do it with excellence, and do it to the best of your abilities, but not for a moment forget that death is coming. And so I'll leave you with the advice of Imam Ali Karamallahu Wajh, who said, do for your worldly life as if you are going to live forever. However, prepare for eternity, prepare for akhir, for the hereafter, as if you're going to die tomorrow, as if you're going to die this evening. Right? Be prepared. This may be your last day, so don't lose sight of it. Do your best, but be ready to move on. Prepare for your meeting with your Lord and Creator, with truth, with reality, with eternity, to your divine and eternal success. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.